Hey friends, my name is Luisa and this is the Lulu Blue Studio. In this video, I'm going to show you how to paint these colorful roses. You can use some inks if you have them, or you can use normal watercolor paints that you have on your color palette. It is going to be super fun, and in particular, we are going to play with the wet on wet technique. So to start with it, get ready with some paper. I'm using some cold press paper, 100% cotton, with some inks if you have them, and you can use any color to start painting this flower composition. In particular, in this small brown jar, I have some gray inks. And the way we are going to paint this flower composition is to lay a layer of gray ink and then to add onto the first layer of gray ink some more colorful inks of other colors like pink, orange, any color you have at your disposal. So in this moment, I'm using a round brush in size 12. I've applied a first layer of gray ink and I highlighted the overall shape of this rose, mainly using the tip of this brush to create very fine lines and the belly of the brush to create some bigger brush strokes. And I am adding in a second moment, while the gray ink is still wet, some orange ink and some pink ink. In this watercolor flower composition, I am basically allowing the inks to take the lead, and I am just highlighting the shape of these flowers. In particular, these are roses, but then I'm allowing all the inks to just blend with each other and create these beautiful effects. I have started creating the main flower. This is a rose in the center of this page, and I'm going to create some branches and leaves that are coming off the center of this flower. And to create the leaves, I've used first the gray ink, and now on gray ink I'm just adding some bright green. Together with the green, I mix some bright blue, and I allow these colors to just blend into the gray. You will notice how by the end of this tutorial, the blending effects that you already notice on these leaves are going to be even more highlighted when the paint is going to be completely dry. You can add the colors that you prefer. Also, this sort of tutorial is quite free, so you can add even onto the leaves colors that are not usually colors for leaves. I have tried to keep this tutorial a little bit more realistic with the colors of natures, but I have to say I also played a little bit. So for example, in this case, I've added a little bit of blue onto the leaves. And one thing that I wanted to share with you when you are creating a composition like this one is to remember to give to this composition a sort of flow. So don't create some straight lines for your leaves or for your branches. And when you create these flowers, remember to have them in different sizes and that are facing different areas of the whole page. So in this way, you will create a little bit of movement into your composition. As you have noticed, this second rose has a layer of gray ink, but now I'm adding a mixture of brown and orange. I have also removed part of the ink into the cup of water, and I'm adding some more brush strokes in pink ink that are a little bit lighter. So although I'm playing with inks, I'm using the same techniques I use when I paint with watercolor paints, with the usual watercolor paints. So I remember to create, for example, the first layer of gray ink with different color values. Some brush strokes are more concentrated, while some other brush strokes are much lighter. I remove a part of the gray ink into the cup of water. And I behave in the same way also with the more concentrated inks. So some brush strokes are more concentrated, while some brush strokes are of different colors, for example in pink or brown, but I remove a part of the pigment in the cup of water. You can also achieve the same effect with your usual watercolor paints that you have on your color palette. You can, for example, create the base, what I use the gray ink for, with any other color, for example, some light blue or dark blue, whatever you want. Or you can recreate a gray color with the paints you have at your disposal, and then you can add further brush strokes on top to allow some blending effects to happen. Remember to have fun while you are doing this project, and remember that this is also a great exercise to not only practice your brush strokes with a round brush in size 12, for example, but also to play with the color values of the paints you're using. Indeed, some brush strokes or some petals can be left in gray color. You don't need to add watercolor inks on all of your brush strokes in gray color. Some can stay the color of the base, and it is like this that you can play with different effects, and you can achieve a final effect that is moodier. For example, if you want to use colors that are darker or to leave much more gray to be seen, or much brighter effects on your composition when you play with the brighter colors such as yellow, or bright orange and bright pink. If you're enjoying watching this tutorial and if you are learning something from this tutorial, let me know in the comments below. And subscribe to this channel because it really helps me to create free content for you to watch. Also, if you want to improve your watercolor skills, you can always download at the link in the description down below the watercolor guide that I've written. The name is The Beginner's Guide to Watercolor Flower Painting, where I share all my knowledge about supplies, techniques, and I also show you how to start painting easy flowers in watercolor. So download your guide for free by clicking on the link in the description down below. And so back to our painting, I'm still using this same brush, and now I'm adding some darker brush strokes, imitation of leaves, onto this composition in the upper part. I am always mixing a little bit of gray ink as a first layer, and then I add darker brush strokes or brighter brush strokes, depending on what I want to achieve as a final effect. You can find all the details of the inks I'm using in this flower composition in the description down below. And I have to say I really enjoy playing with inks because the concentration of pigment is so high that you can really achieve different effects compared to when you are painting with standard watercolor paints. Also, don't forget that you can mix your inks with your standard watercolor paints to achieve beautiful effects. So, for example, you can paint some areas with your normal standard watercolor paints and then add a few brush strokes with inks to highlight some parts. For now, back to this painting, I've created some leaves that are in a very light color value. That means that I have mixed some inks with a lot of water, and therefore I can create some light brush strokes. And I'm creating these leaves, and I'm trying to give to these leaves a sort of flow. So I am placing these leaves all around the main flowers, and I am creating a sort of branch down to the bottom of the page. I find using a round brush in size 12 the best way to create loose style leaves, and this is the technique I've used up until now. I waited for this whole composition to be completely dry, and then I picked my round brush in size 6 from Silver Black Velvet, and I'm going to use this brush to start to add a few layers. You can add layers if you like to have a little bit more definition onto these flowers, but you can also leave this flower composition as it is. In particular, I'm mixing a little bit of Quinacridone Purple and Sap Green, so I'm not using for this purpose my inks, but just my watercolor paints. And using either the tip of the brush or the belly of this brush, I'm creating different brush strokes just onto the leaves. The reason why I'm using these paints and not the inks to create these brush strokes is because I like to play, in this case, with a denser consistency on my brush to add these veins onto the leaves. But you can add these brush strokes also with inks if you have them and if you want to play with them. When I'm adding these brush strokes, I sometimes add a few brush strokes exactly into the leaves, but sometimes I also add a few brush strokes over the leaves, so I just define a little bit better the shape of these leaves, and I am not too precise where I'm adding these brush strokes. We are approaching the end of this tutorial. I know this was quite different from all the other ones. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and let me know if you have painted along with me or if you're going to paint this watercolor flower piece on your own. As always, thank you very much for watching. See you on my next video.